Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Peak, and I am the principal investigator for the National Science Foundation funded CONVERGE initiative, which is headquartered here at the Natural Hazards Center at the University of Colorado Boulder. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the CONVERGE webinar series, and I am so excited for what we have in store for you today. Our three main objectives for today's webinar are to share information about the new DesignSafe capabilities for social science, engineering, and interdisciplinary natural hazards research, to understand why publishing and sharing data and instruments is important, and to learn from three of our recently initiated CONVERGE Data Ambassadors who have already published data with DesignSafe. Before proceeding any further, I want to note that this webinar is being recorded. The captioned recording and slides will be posted on the CONVERGE website at converge.colorado.edu. Should you have any questions or comments during this webinar, please use the Q&A or the chat box. If we don't have time to respond during this brief webinar, we will provide written responses after the webinar ends. Today, during this brief 30-minute webinar, you are going to first learn from Professor Ellen Rathje, the director of the NSF-funded DesignSafe Cyberinfrastructure at the University of Texas, Austin, about resources that are now available for the social science and engineering and interdisciplinary hazards research community that now allow us to publish our data collection instruments, and research protocols, as well as to receive a permanent digital object identifier, or DOI. After Ellen speaks, then I will provide a very brief overview of the progress that we have made together in offering data publication trainings and resources through CONVERGE and DesignSafe. Then we will turn it over to three of our CONVERGE data ambassadors. We'll hear from Lauren Clay, Betty Lai, and Nathaniel Rosenheim, who will each take about 3 to 4 minutes to share about their experience using DesignSafe, what they have published to date on DesignSafe, and how they have shared these capabilities with others as part of their data ambassador role. So we have an action-packed 30 minutes, so without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn this over to Ellen. Ellen?
Great, thanks a lot, Lori. Let me just get this all set up here and we'll be ready to go. All right, well, welcome everyone. I want to add my welcome to Lori's, and I'm just going to give you a really brief synopsis of DesignSafe, which is a cyber infrastructure designed to really support the full gamut of natural hazards research. So I'm always asked, what is DesignSafe? I like to describe it as a web-based research platform that enables us to do the transformative research that we want to do, that ultimately will lead us to protect human life and reduce damage during future natural hazard events. Our vision for what we provide to do that is to give you a cyber infrastructure that becomes an integral part of your research process. And there's really three key components: providing first a platform for data sharing and publishing, which is the main focus of today's webinar. But we also are here to enable research workflows and provide access to high performance computing, and also deliver cloud-based tools that support the many things we do in our research, including the analysis, visualization, and integration of diverse data types. Through these mechanisms, we hope to amplify and link the capabilities of all types of disciplines that are studying natural hazards, both here in the US and abroad. So here's just a flavor of our newly redesigned DesignSafe website. The key components there on the upper left-hand side are found in what is now called the workspace. Well, I'll take you on a little tour of what's there, but you can see we've got the data depot, which will be our main focus of discussions today, but we also have other things to support those other components of research I mentioned. So taking a closer look, here's our data depot, and I'll talk a lot about that, so I'm going to skip right past that, but I did want to make sure to mention the tools and applications section, where we can provide access to things like Jupyter and Python, We have various types of mapping tools that, again, all work in the cloud. So our own in-house HasMapper, as well as open source GIS through QGIS. Reconnaissance portal, where you can link to different data sets that have studied various natural hazards and natural hazard events. And then the Learning Center is where all the tutorials reside, which is where you can learn more about how to use DesignSafe. So let's talk about the Data Depot. The Data Depot is not here just to publish. It's here to support you through your entire research project. So you'll see a lot of stuff in here. So under My Projects, that's where you can share files with your group, data, results, you have access to the tools, etc. And eventually that's where your published data will come from, inside a project. Lots of cool stuff. We can link to your cloud service providers you use. And then when you do publish a project, it goes, publish your data set, it goes into this published section of the Data Depot. And so here's an example of an experimental data set. You know, it looks somewhat like a journal article. There's an abstract, but then you scroll down, you start to see the data, the way we try to organize it so people can reuse that data. There's descriptions, etc. So this is the interface where a new user would try and gain access to your data set. Now we realize we have to serve lots of different types of researchers. So we have different data models, which provide some structure, but also give you flexibility to describe your data as necessary. The two most relevant, I think, that I want to focus on today, and really the one, is the field research data model and field research projects. Although if you have a data set that doesn't quite fit into the field research realm, you can use our data model that's simply called Other. That's kind of the catch-all for anything that doesn't fit into these boxes. I do want to mention that with flexibility comes responsibility. So you as the researcher have a lot of the responsibility to best organize the data so others can use it. So here's just a quick look at the field research data model. You know, this is an example where Lori and Joe Wortman tried to look at how they would integrate their data, say for a hurricane reconnaissance. So you can see this was for Hurricane Michael. We organized things relative to mission, which would be a group of data that are collected with a common goal. So that's shown here. And then within the mission, we have different collections. So we can have the engineering data and then also the social science collections that are related to that. So this is how you need to, you want to organize things. Lori mentioned DOIs. Making your data count and making your research reproducible is it's really important to formally publish your data sets. So that's what we are trying to provide. We give you a DOI, and we want to make sure it's clear that how to cite data. You know, this is just an example from a research paper where we cited a data set. So it looks in the paper just like a regular citation, but in your references, the DOI actually points to the DesignSafe site for your project. So the last thing I wanted to say this is a ton of stuff that I could be talking about. We are here to help you. We have the curation and publication guidelines under the user guide area. I will mention that we are in the midst of redesigning our user guides. So some of these links may not be working in a month or two, but you'll be able to find them under this user guide area under the workspace. We can help you with large data transfers. And really important, we're not here just to have online assistance. We have people who can assist you. Maria Esteva is our data curator. She is assisted by Mayar Sharifi, and they hold virtual curation office hours twice a week or by appointment, where they can look at a project with you and provide you some specific advice in your realm. And then we do have a DesignSafe Slack team, so you can also interface with us there. And I think I will stop there, and I know I went too long, Lori, so I will stop.
Ellen, that was absolutely fantastic. And I know that was only 5 minutes of what has been many, many years in the making. And so thank you so much for that and everything that the DesignSafe team is doing to bring these capabilities to the entire natural hazards research community. So thank you for that overview. And I'm just going to take a couple of minutes now to talk to everyone about placing this initiative in broader context, and in particular to show how the efforts of DesignSafe are partially in response to longstanding calls for enhanced data publication and data sharing infrastructure within our broader community. So for example, in an influential 2016 report on public access to NSF funded research data, the authors stated that, quote, "For the past 3 decades, leaders of the scientific community have called for sharing access to scientific data. The main rationales for data sharing include to reproduce or verify research, to make the results of publicly funded research available to the public, to enable others to ask new questions of extant data, and to advance the state of research and innovation," just as Ellen said. And this report went on to say, and to sort of remind us as researchers, that increasingly our funding agencies, and may I insert our journals, I saw Louise Comfort from Natural Hazards Review is on here, funding agencies as well as publications around the world are requiring investigators to share data created with public support. So what DesignSafe is providing for us is so important and is increasingly becoming required and necessary. So this recognition of the need for perishable data collection and publication, but also, as Ellen said, for this longer term sort of a research life cycle that could actually unfold in the cyber infrastructure, it really helped to solidify a partnership between DesignSafe and CONVERGE, and between engineering and social sciences, to ensure that data publication capabilities would be available across our natural hazards and disaster research community. So to briefly take you on this journey, CONVERGE and DesignSafe formally established a partnership in 2018. DesignSafe had been around well before that and doing fabulous things, but we established a partnership in August of 2018. By October of 2018, the DesignSafe team came to Boulder, Colorado, and put us to work. Their data librarians and data architects and computer scientists actually had a group of us social scientists and interdisciplinary researchers draw out our data collection process, and that literally became the foundation for the data model that we're going to be talking about even more today. We got a draft of the data model together after that big meeting in 2018. And then many of you on this webinar today were at the 2019 Natural Hazards Workshop in Boulder. And actually over 80 of you helped us to test that data model, gave the DesignSafe team feedback. And then in May of 2020, that data model was released to the public. Now, after it was released, Ellen and I started having a lot of conversations about how do we actually get this into the hands of the people who we want to have know about it and to use it. So in August of 2020, we hosted 2 publisher data events that brought together social scientists and engineering and interdisciplinary researchers to help learn about the new capabilities associated with that field research data model. And these were hands-on training sessions that not only did the researchers learn about DesignSafe and all of its capabilities, they also opened up new projects and had the opportunity to start this process of curating their data. Thus far, of those 40 plus people who went through the publisher data training events, which are all recorded and are up on our CONVERGE website, we have had 9 persons who went through the training and then actually went on to publish something in DesignSafe, research, instruments, etc. And these data ambassadors have then gone on to teach their students, collaborators, colleagues, and others about the capabilities of DesignSafe. And with that, I am so excited to introduce you to 3 of our recently named CONVERGE Data Ambassadors. We might call them the early adopters and super users, who not only were early adopters of this new data model, but also they've put quite a bit of information up in DesignSafe. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and with great happiness, turn this over to Lauren Clay, who is the first of our 3 data ambassadors, who's going to share with you a bit about her journey with DesignSafe. Lauren.
Unmute, start slideshow. Am I up there? Yes, okay, perfect. Thanks so much, Lori. So I'm going to talk with you for 4 minutes about how DesignSafe has transformed my research and collaboration workflow. If I can figure out how, there we go. So I came to the DesignSafe table thinking this will be a great place to publish my data to make it available for people to use in the future. But even more immediately, I have really come to appreciate the end-to-end data management piece of it. So I'm going to start with that. There we go. So the end-to-end data management piece for me has been a huge game changer because I participate in lots of multi-institutional interdisciplinary collaborations. So here's my data depot, and you can see my projects listed here. And what's so great is that I can invite all of my team members from across institutions to access my project. So here's an example of one with some collaborators at SUNY Albany. And I just go in and I add them as users, as well as some folks that are collaborating on analysis. And then we all have access to DesignSafe. While we're in there, I can set some parameters around how we interact. So in my project, I have a file called README, and it says, this is what's here. This is what you can use. This is what you should save back here in the future. And we all have sort of a standard operating procedure. I'm going to back up 1 second. I just want to emphasize how this is so important. So we're all at different institutions, and data has to live somewhere. And it becomes really challenging if someone moves institutions, or if one institution is collecting one piece of the study and another institution is collecting another piece of the study. Who owns that data? Where does it live? How do we all access it? DesignSafe is a nice centralized place. It's secure. It's very easy to write into a data management plan, and you just have a centralized location where everyone can access the information. This recently came into play. I have a student, she's working on her doctoral research related to one of my projects, and her advisor said, well, what are you going to do with your data? And she came to me and said, I wanted to live with the rest of the study. But she's doing this subset of interviews that aren't affiliated with my institution at all. So in this case, she's going to say, I'm going to publish in DesignSafe as part of the project, and all of the data gets to live together. So that's my end-to-end data management plug. It's been so great just to have that centralized feature. I've been using it on 3 or 4 projects, and across the board, everyone's been really appreciative. Now, publishing. What have I published? So the first thing I published early on in the COVID-19 pandemic, I became the warehouse for a set of social determinants of health data collection instruments. Collaborators all over the country were talking and saying, we want to replicate measures, we want to coordinate, how do we do that? So we started with a Google Doc, and eventually we're able to put everything together and get it into DesignSafe, so that now as people are developing new instruments, writing grants, they can cite it right here. And another thing that I'm doing, so I haven't actually published any data sets yet, but I have been publishing works in progress. So research briefs. As the data is being collected, we're cleaning it up. We're putting it together in 2 3-page research briefs to share with community stakeholders and people working in, to respond to different events. And we're able to publish those right here in DesignSafe. I'll show you what that looks like. So here are the things that I've actually published. 2 projects and that instrument repository. And this is an example of the research briefs. So on this project, we have 3 research briefs, and they're each available here. And when you click on them, there's information. You can download them, and you can get a citation with that DOI. It makes it very easy to cite and to share. So this is an example of where these briefs are housed on a project website. So the view brief link goes right back to DesignSafe, and I have them listed right there on my CV. From the publishing perspective, the projects are published just with research briefs right now. And then as I wrap up the main study aims, I'll be working on the curation process. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then also on deck, going back into the past projects that are now closed, getting those curated and putting them up for data reuse by others. Is that 4 minutes?
That's perfect. Thank you, Lauren. Now we're going to turn it over to Betty Lai. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. So I know that you are fired up right now after hearing from Ellen, Lori, and Lauren, and you're wondering, okay, but how much of a time investment will it take me to actually get up to speed and be able to use DesignSafe myself? Well, I will speak from my experience. It's very user-friendly, and there are 2 main things that I used that I think will be really helpful to everybody on this call. There's a help desk first, so if you run into any sort of technical difficulties, you can put in a ticket and they get back to you right away. And they even followed up with me the few times that I just lost my password and I kept losing it, and they helped me every time and were so nice about it. But that office hours issue that Ellen mentioned is huge, because I got to meet and just sit with Maria, and Maria walked me through every single piece to make sure that I understood exactly what I needed to do to publish my work. So it's very easy. They've really set it up to be amazingly user-friendly. Now, I want to talk about what I published and give you a sense of what I learned through the process. So I published a qualitative interview protocol. So this was our protocol of qualitative questions that we are asking right now in our study of college student responses to the current pandemic. And my experience using DesignSafe was incredible because I found that it's resolved 3 pain points in my work. And I'm going to tell you what those 3 pain points are, because I imagine that many of you on this call have similar pain points that DesignSafe could solve for you. My first pain point is, how do you build on knowledge of those who've gone before you? In our case, we were designing this qualitative interview protocol, but to design it, we emailed our collaborators, labs we knew. We emailed out to 5 different labs that were focused on purpose and mental health in disasters. And that, 1, took a lot of time, but 2, we were emailing people that we knew or were connected with. But that probably, if I imagine for all of you on this call, you didn't get into research because you wanted to just talk to people you knew. No, you wanted to advance knowledge and make new connections. And DesignSafe really resolved that pain point in my work for me, because now my protocol is up and you can see what we learned from those 5 other labs. But I hope that you jump from there and that we connect from this work being up there. So that was my first big pain point that it resolved for me. My second big pain point was, how do you recognize the work of trainees who graduate before all those finished projects and products come out of your lab? So this happened to me in this current study. So we launched this study last March, April, and 2 of the students who were really integral in getting this study up off the ground, they graduated last spring. Now, we are only now getting around to the publishing and the manuscript portions, and these are 2 students who weren't interested in research careers, so they're not continuing on and wanting to still be involved in those manuscripts, but they really played a huge part in this work. And now, because we've published this protocol, we get to recognize that work that they did, and they get to put it on their CVs, on their resumes, and we really get to show the work that they've done. So that was a huge pain point that it resolved for me. And honestly, that was a huge surprise for me and just such a huge benefit, and the reason why I'm going to keep coming back and back and back to DesignSafe. And the third pain point that this resolved for me was, how do we find ways to show physical products of things that we worked on in our labs that are beyond just that final manuscript? So being able to show and talk about this interview protocol, for example, for my students who are going on postdoc interviews, how do they communicate about this work that they've been intimately involved in now for 9 months? Now they have a way to do that. And for me, this was transformational. And just getting to hear from Lauren, and I have had a sneak peek of what Nathaniel's going to talk about, I know that there are so many cool uses and new pain points that this can resolve for me, and I hope for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. I'm going to get my screen up here. So I definitely resonate with what Betty and Lauren have talked about. Many of those, I have never heard the word pain point, but definitely see some that that definitely resonates with me. I'm going to show a quick example in the short amount of time. Right now, I've got about 5 projects published on DesignSafe, and I'm actively using DesignSafe for several other projects. But one of the really great things that I found is being able to use DesignSafe's capabilities to actually create and publish data within DesignSafe. So this is a project, you can look it up in DesignSafe right now, and this was done with 2 graduate students. Keygen is actually on this WebEx today. And so it's also nice being able to work with students and get work published in a way that's shareable and public, and identifies a lot of these key stepping points along the research project that are important for the actual research design and the research development. And this is a good project example of from beginning to end. We used DesignSafe over about a 2-month period, so it was a fairly short turnaround in terms of how much time it took to start the project and publish it. When you're in DesignSafe, you have the project files. What you see on the public side, this is just showing you some of what you can actually see and how it looks on the public side. But when you're actually in DesignSafe, you don't actually have to publish everything that you put in your project. So just because you have stuff in your project, you can select which files you want published, and you don't have to publish everything that's in your project folder. So we have these work folders that are internal to the project, but we can keep those archived for future reference within the project as well. One of the great things with DesignSafe is it is this end-to-end tool. Has been discussed. I have learned to use Jupyter Notebooks, which is a way of accessing Python, which is a free and open source programming environment. And so DesignSafe provides this resource that a lot of other archives don't provide, in that you can actually do your data cleaning, data analysis, data exploration in the DesignSafe environment, publish your workflow, publish your documentation into DesignSafe. And this is something that's part of if you have a user account, you automatically have this as part of your project. And so that's all I want to say, and thank you. I hope everybody enjoys using DesignSafe in fun ways.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel, for that. And thank you to everyone who is on the webinar today. We've seen several great questions come through the chat and the Q&A, and I know Ellen has been responding as fast as she can. So we just want to, in closing this out, we first want to just acknowledge the National Science Foundation, not just for the support of this webinar series, but for everything that has helped to make this collaboration and these outputs possible. And again, we want to thank all of you for joining today. And we just want to remind you all that this webinar will be posted on the Converge website, along with a transcript of the entire webinar at converge.colorado.edu. We hope you will sign up for future events and resources via the sign up page, and you can always contact us at Converge. And so thank you for that. And we have a couple of minutes remaining. And so I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen right now. And I actually want to ask ask, just first again, thank Lauren, Nathaniel, Betty, and Ellen. Is there any question that's come up that you haven't been able to respond to in the chat that you want to respond to before we close this out today?
One thing I thought, Lori, you might be able to speak best to is the IRB side of things, because I'm not, but how do you explain about DesignSafe to the local university IRB?
Yes, thank you for that. So just briefly, one of the things you can do on DesignSafe that we're actually doing with a project we're publishing right now is we're publishing our IRB protocol, so that can be a part of our project, and other researchers can actually look at the protocol, but much more deeply on that in terms of data safety, security. From the start of this partnership, we've had all kinds of conversations with DesignSafe about de-identified data. We have 3 levels of data security that DesignSafe has established. So if you have certain data types that are highly confidential, highly sensitive, you're going to go through an additional review with DesignSafe that would undoubtedly be related to your particular IRB review. And so it is a great question. It's something we put a lot of time and effort into at the start of this. And I know it's going to be different for every project depending on your IRB approach. But that's definitely something we'd love to dive into more deeply. And I saw there's another question about that, about data safety and sharing protocols that oftentimes are also required as part of our grant applications. And so really that's something we can put in there as well to talk about the use there. Good.
Great. I think we might have some engineers hiding out among us other than me, because someone asked about STKO. So just, you can send me a note, and yeah, you can use STKO for free on DesignSafe. We actually have an agreement with them. So we can chat about that.
Wonderful. And with that, everyone, we know we're at time right now. So we just, on behalf of all the panelists, we want to thank you. We're so glad you're connected to DesignSafe now, and you now have eyes on 3 of our star data ambassadors who have so much experience. And we will definitely be following up personally with those of you who put questions and comments, so we can bring you into this community too. So thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone. And please remember to take care of yourself and others. We'll see you soon.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.